as I go along, if you have a question, just raise your hand. Now, of course, you all know you live in Ford County, right? Yeah. Now, is there anyone that lives in Melvin? Okay. What about Sibley? No Sibley people. Rest of you all Gibson City?
I live in
Elliott. All right, I forgot about Elliott. Can't forget about Elliott. So you're from Elliott. So all of you live in the county of Ford. So I'm here to tell you some fun facts about it. It's kind of what I do. I have a website. I post pictures, stories, everything I can figure out about Ford County. Okay? If I touch this, does it flip or? No. Okay. So we're going to talk about the fun facts of Ford County. Is there? All right. It might. Okay. How many of you like history? So? Hey, that's pretty good. That's good. How many of you like local history? So you might learn about the American Revolution, all those things, but if you want to learn about local stuff, you're going to learn about Ford County. Like I said, my name's Mr. Babbs, and I run a site. I'm also in a lot of historical societies here in Ford County. I'm involved in a lot of them. Anything to do with history, I try to be involved in it because I think history is very important, and that's why I come to meet with you guys, because you're the next generation that can save our history. I'm not going to be doing this forever. Some days one of you guys might step up and start doing it. The more the better. Ford County has a long history of forming, and I'll explain that. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the Ottawa Travel Road. There's a road and it wasn't a road like a brick road or a paved road. It was just dirt, mud along some of the waterways. And people have been traveling that from prehistoric times. Native Americans, all the way back. That was known as the Ottawa Travel Road. And it was used by Native Americans, but then later used by settlers to come here and settle. This road would take you from Danville. Does anyone know where Danville is? You ever heard Danville? And it would take you all the way to Ottawa. Has anyone heard of Ottawa before? That's a long ways, even in a car. That's a long stretch. But these people would have to do it by horse. They'd have to do it by whatever means they had, walk. But when you got to this plaque, which is on the edge of Paxton, it's called 10 Miles Grove, there's this plaque explaining that this was the stopping point of many of those settlers, and many of the Native Americans lived there for a time too, back in the early days. Yes?
So the Indians, was the Illinois, were we before the settlers, was it Indian land?
All this was inhabited by the Indians.
No, which
It kind of was different tribe. We had Iroquois, we had Fox and Sioux. There was a lot of different tribes that passed through here. And did Indians stay in one place and just stay there forever? No. They used this road to travel as the seasons came. So a lot of people that have property on this area find arrowheads, Indian artifacts all the time. Lots of them. Because as the people travel, what do? You leave stuff. You drop stuff. And even settlers, you would drop stuff. So when you got to this plaque, you could make a choice there on the edge of Paxton that you want to go ahead and go on to Ottawa. Or, does anyone know where Saybrook is?
Yes.
And Saybrook and Arrowsmith had a huge Native American population. Huge, huge, huge. So a lot of Native Americans, the sign wasn't there though, but they would know that that's the way they traveled to get to that group. It was so like I was saying, you can find artifacts, arrowheads. We have tons of them at the museum in Paxton. Tons of them. Anything you can think of Native American through the years. Yes?
Did you guys find a bow?
They have found everything. From all the way back to early Native Americans, all the way back to prehistoric, all the way up to, when the settlers were using it. Yes?
I was about to say, do you guys have like clothes from them?
No clothes, mainly just artifacts of, arrowheads, points, they call them. Axes, they found axes, they have found sharpening tools. I mean, they've found arrowheads, spearheads, and they all come from different time periods. It's really cool. So if you're ever in Paxton, stop and see the museum sometime. So Ford County was the last county to form in 1859 from Vermilion County. So this is Ford County. This is where you're at. And we were the last ones to form. We were a part of this county. And why do you think we're so weirdly shaped? Because we were the last ones. So this was land that was left over, right? So some people say the Ford County, they saved the best for last. It's kind of a joke, really, because the land was not very good. It was land that a lot of people didn't want. And why would that be? Does anyone think maybe they might know?
Too small?
Ah.
Because anybody else didn't want that land because it felt not good at soil.
Hey, you're on the money there. It was swamp.
Oh.
This was mainly all swamp land. Do people back then, did they want swamp land? Do you want to live on a swamp? No. They didn't want to live in a swamp. They didn't want to buy swamp land. Because what are you going to do with it? Well, later on, they figured out, hey, it's really good land if you drain it, get the water off it, and this is, the new county was named in honor of the 8th Illinois governor, Thomas Ford. So he was a governor, and people ask me all the time, why did they name it after him? They thought he was a very honest man. Not many people know about Thomas Ford, but they believe his honesty is why they named the county after him. And, I mean, they tried other names. They tried other times to try to get the county for him, but finally it did in 1859. So, who said they live in Melvin? Do you know what township you live in? It'd be the Peach Orchard. So you live in Ford County, you live in the township of the Peach Orchard, and then you live in Melvin or in the country. So if you're from Sibley, which there was no one in here, you'd be Sullivan Township. Oh, yep, okay. I knew that. Now, who was from Elliott? You, where would you be? Do you know? I won't point at it. Dix Township, right? Yeah. There's 12 townships in Ford County. Yeah.
I live 2 miles out of Paxton. Where would I be?
Which way, though?
East.
You might be on the line. You might be on the line.
I'm on the line.
You might be on the line, because that's kind of pretty close. Yes?
I live in like kind of close to Elliott, but it's like
In the country? Yeah. So you're probably in Dix Township, I'm sure. I'm sure you are. Because if you were on the other side of Elliott, where would you go to school? Paxton. Yeah, you would go to Paxton. You wouldn't go here. So that's why I'm saying I'm sure you're on the side of Dix Township. But there's 12 townships. And if you look up here, look how far away. Ford County's really long, but it's really short across. It's only about 5 miles across. So you can go here, go 5 miles, and you're practically out of Ford County. It's just so weirdly shaped. The swamps were up in here really bad. Swamps were in here really bad. And that's why it took so long. Yes? Oh, some of it was. Some of it was. But how many cities? Does anyone know? How many cities are in Ford County? Can you name them? Gibson City, that's a good one. And there's the other one, Paxton. Those are the two cities. Now there's 7 villages. Yep, one of them. Cabry, Elliott, Kempton, Melvin, Piper City, Roberts, and Sibley. Now there's what this means is there's no post office. So these are communities without a post office, okay? So that would be Clarence, Darby, Farmersville, Garber, Guthrie. Has anyone heard of Guthrie? Yeah, some of you might live by Guthrie. Harpster, Proctor, Purdueville, and Stell. Some of those you've never heard of. Some of them you wouldn't have a clue even if you drove through it. Because there's nothing there. There's barely anything there anymore. Most of them are just gone. Yeah.
Farmland.
They're farmland. There might be an elevator there. That's about it. Might be 1 or 2 houses. But you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know even what it is. Now, we didn't have any Sibley people here, which kind of bums. Well, Miss Brooker is. But this man, his name was Big Mike Sullivan. And he said, I'm going to buy that land. Fort County wasn't even formed yet. He wanted the land around Sibley, all swamp. He wanted that land, and he paid $1 to $1.50 per acre. Anyone that knows about acre, you know farmland's expensive, right? Yeah. So he became the biggest known farmer. He bought a massive amount, even into Livingston County, even into McLean County. He just bought a huge chunk of it. He purchased 80,000 acres of land in Illinois. 32 of the acres were in Ford County. 32,000 acres in Ford County. Paid $1.25 per acre. Practically, I mean, he got a heck of a deal. But no one wanted it. But he saw that there was possibilities for it. A good portion of land was swampy marsh. And if you go on the edge of Sibley, there's a row of trees on the edge of Sibley, and if you go look out there, it's still swampy marsh. They call it bur oaks. And it's what the land looked like when he came. It's nothing you would want to walk around in. Nothing you'd want to do anything in. It's really nasty. Skeeters, yeah. What's that?
Is there alligators?
No. But I wouldn't want to walk around in it. And I mean, unless I had boots up to, all the way up. Yeah. But he's going to start this huge farming operation. And he's going to be, they called him the world's largest farm king in magazines. This was huge. Him coming, buying cheap land, going to make it into something. He preferred single African Americans to work on his estate. He said they were the hardest workers around. So he would send his manager down south, because the Civil War just got over now, and he brought African Americans up here to work. Treated them great, gave them, a great place to live, gave them good food, gave them good pay. What's that? No, it wasn't slavery. These people came out of slavery, and he hired them to work for him because he knew they were hard workers. He ran his estate like a military. He wanted single men with no families, and you were here to work like you were in the military. And you could not address him. If you were working as a farmer for him, you could not walk up to him and say, "Hi, how you doing?" You had to go. You could not talk to him because he was the general. He was the commander-in-chief of everything. You would have to go to your supervisor. His supervisor would have to go. It's up the chain. So you did not address him. Sadly, he lost everything. His health became bad. He couldn't tell people what to do, couldn't run the farm. The economy, does people know what the economy means? It went bad. It went, the corn he was growing, the stuff he was doing wasn't worth anything anymore. Lost everything. He died penniless and alone on a steamboat. So it's kind of a sad story. But the township, Sullivan Township, is named after him because he was the first one there to pretty much try to take that marsh land and make it into a good land. This is the person that bought all that land off him. And what's his name? Mr. Sibley. Hiram Sibley. That's how Sibley got its name. I wish we had Sibley. Or Sibley people. I feel like I'm talking and no one's from Sibley. But anyway, Mr. Sullivan owed him a lot of money. So when Mr. Sullivan went broke, Mr. Sibley stepped up, took all the land pretty much, and he was a very wealthy man from Chicago. Yes.
Does it count if we used to live in?
Did you? Hey, I'll take that.
That's where I
I used to live in that.
Did you? Well, we got one maybe Paxton thing here. So Mr. Sibley here was a very wealthy man. He was the president of Western Union. I don't know if you've ever heard of Western Union before, but he was the president of it. So he was very, very wealthy. So Mr. Sullivan owed him a great debt. So Mr. Sibley was failed, and Mr. Sibley took the property. 32,000 acres of land in Ford County. Sibley wanted to do things differently, though. He wanted you to have a family. He was going to build you schools. He was going to build you churches. He was going to build you a community of Sibley. Because he wanted farm families. Because he thought they were the best workers. So he wanted tenant farmers and families, and wanted to have a friendly community, not a military community, but a friendly community. He would pass, so this is the interesting part, he would pass all the land to his heirs. Does anyone know what an heir is? So if your dad had all that land, he would pass it on to you. And if you had kids, you would pass it on to them. They passed it on for 5 generations. 5, down the line. Yes? Why did it stop? The person didn't want to do it anymore. We'll just say that. They didn't really want to do it that way anymore, and so they stopped doing it and they sold all the land off. But that was back in just not too many years ago. So they'd been running. So Ford County, you know that Paxton's the county seat, right? So if you have to go to court or you got to go to the courthouse, where's the courthouse at? Paxton. Well, at one time, there was a feud where the courthouse is going to be. People of Gibson City said, we want it here. We want it in Gibson. We want Gibson to be this county seat of Ford County. You think that went over well? Do you think that made people probably mad? People in Paxton weren't happy. The feud started in the fall of 1905 when the people of Paxton wanted to update the old courthouse. This is the old courthouse. This one's gone. It's huge. So the citizens of Gibson City started a petition to give the county seat over to Gibson and have a new courthouse built. Do you know where the new courthouse would have been built? In Gibson, but do you know where at? They had it planned.
The park that we have now?
No, it's where you guys went to elementary school.
What?
That's where the courthouse was going to be built. They were going to put it right there. Fell through, they never built it. So it became something else. It became the high school eventually. And now, then down the road, it became the elementary school for you guys. Now you're in the middle school. In November, there was an election. The citizens voted. And the citizens pretty much voted Everyone in the county got the vote. The citizens pretty much voted it's going to stay in Paxton. It's not going to come to Gibson. So Gibson people weren't very happy about that. So they were just supposed to remodel this and update it. So now since they won, you know what they did? They knocked the whole thing down. They knocked the whole thing down but one wall. One wall. It was supposed to just be remodeled. They knocked the building down but one wall. But one wall was knocked down, and the new courthouse was built in 1908, and that's the one we have now. This started the rivalry. What's a rivalry? When we play Paxton in football, yeah. Kinda. So when we go to Paxton and play them in sports, do we all get along? No, we're nice to each other. But do we want to win? They want to win. It's a rivalry. We want to beat them. We're Gibson City. They want to beat us. They're Paxton. Okay? So that's where that kind of all started. And it still goes on today. Sadly, we don't play them in football anymore. Which, yeah, they did away with it. We don't play Paxton and Gibson City don't play each other anymore in football. They had to change some things. Look at this guy. That's what a hard pioneer looks like. This guy's probably not that old. That's a rough life. Don't you think? I bet this guy's probably only in his 40s or something too. I mean, he's probably not that old. Well, he's not in his 20s, but I'm sure he's probably in his 40s. Rough life. Why'd they have such a rough life? Yeah. Life wasn't easy. Life wasn't easy back then like it is today. It's a lot easier. But this man is how we call Drummer Township got its name, okay? Drummer Township was named by this man, Thomas Cheney, after his hunting dog named Drummer. This township is named after a dog. The dog died while chasing a deer and was buried in what was known as Drummer's Grove. Because they buried him there, so it became Drummer's, the dog's grove. Hold on 1 minute. The mascot of Gibson City, later, it's not anymore because we're the Falcons now, but was the Greyhounds. Well, why was it the Greyhounds? Because of Drummer. Drummer, the Greyhound. Yeah.
Why do we have the Falcon now?
It's just because the schools consolidated, so they wanted to start fresh. And so, everyone had their own mascot, so they kind of just had to make a new one. Yeah. It got shot. He shot the dog when he was hunting. He shot the dog when he was hunting because he was upset at the dog and then later felt bad for doing that. Remember, these are different times. And he felt bad because then he realized later that it was a really good dog. And so that's why he named the township after him. Yeah, kind of sad. But, rough life there. Does anyone know what an execution is? Yes.
Isn't it where you kill someone or?
Yes. Guilty of a serious crime, right? And what do they do to you? They don't chop your head off. Maybe in another time period, but not.
When you went to prison, you served prison for a long time.
You could. But yeah, you could. But what's another thing they could do? They could also hang you. There has been one hanging in Ford County, only one. That is good actually, because other counties had a lot more. But we started kind of late, so we weren't in those early days. But this is a picture of the gentleman before he was hanged. His name. So this is the gentleman that was hung. This is the sheriff and his deputy standing on the scaffolding that was going to hang him. He's an interesting fellow. Frederick W. Holman was one of the earliest known serial killers. Does anyone know what a serial killer is?
He goes on the street.
Pretty much. That's all it is. And they caught him. They caught him here. Stopped him and executed him. That's kind of what it's about. He suspected of death of 5 women by strangulation from Wisconsin to Illinois. Yes, from June to December 1896. and he walked that. It wasn't like he jumped in his car and drove. He kind of was just a drifter. Convicted of one case, first-degree murder, the death of Webka Geddes in Sibley. So they caught him, convicted him, execution by hanging in Ford County Jail. The old Ford County Jail is still there. It's in Paxton, yep. It's on the corner. There's the new one in the back, and then the front's the old one. And so he was in Paxton in 1897. They hanged him. They executed him. He is believed to still haunt the Ford County Jail to this day.
No. I know nothing with ghosts. That's not me. That ain't me. I love ghosts.
Some people believe it. I'm not saying it's happening, but they believe he is still there haunting the place. Whether you believe it or not. This is the Sibley Steamboat. Who goes to the 4th of July in Sibley? You go to Sibley 4th of July and that's huge. Yeah, almost. I think most of you probably have. But that lake that you sit around, they shoot the fireworks over? Do you think they had they had a steamboat floating around out there? Yeah. Back then, water levels were different. This steamboat could travel all over the place. Yeah. See, remember how I said it was swamp and it was water, and levels of the streams around Sibley and all that were a lot taller, higher. So this steamboat could steam in and out and go all over the place. Couldn't today. You wouldn't notice it. The steamboat was called the Pride of Sibley. Could travel local waterways. This thing traveled one time all the way up to Kankakee on little streamways. They weren't little then, but they are now. You wouldn't believe it. It was scuttled, which means, does anyone know what scuttled mean? It was sunk in Bur Oak Swamp. And it's still out there somewhere. It's still out there somewhere. Don't know where, but it's out there. And it's swampy out there, so I don't know if I'd want to walk around in it very much. No one knows. It's somewhere out there. Yeah.
Why was there only one guy?
What's that?
There's if you look at the picture again, there's only one guy.
I'm not for sure. That's the only known picture of the boat, so.
Is that the captain?
Of the boat? Yeah. Do you think, presidents, who's good about presidents in here? Who knows a president's really good? 2 of them? You know more than 2?
Yeah.
These are 2 presidents of the United States that came to Gibson City.
What?
Yeah. Ulysses S. Grant and William McKinley both visited Gibson City. Grant came in 1880. McKinley came in 1898. Grant was just passing through. He'd already been president, was retired from, was elected out. He wasn't in office anymore. He was just passing through. Some people saw him and they talked with him for a while. McKinley was running for president, stopped, was supposed to give a big, huge speech, said, "Thank you for coming out, pretty much, and have a good day." and took off. Did not really even give Gibson the time of day. But it's still pretty much, they came through. Who said, did someone say they were from Roberts? No one said Elliot. That was Elliot, okay. You were Elliot? All right. A queen stopped in Ford County. In 1927, Queen Maria Romana was touring the United States by train. When a special train near Roberts, she was in a special train just seeing the whole United States. She was having a good time. She asked that she stop and take pictures of these beautiful trees and wildflowers that she saw out of her train. And that was near Roberts in Ford County. The report said that she had the pictures hung in her palace because she thought it was so beautiful, the flowers. She'd never seen anything like that before. So she stopped for a very short time, had pictures taken, and that was pretty much it.
But she still stopped before.
Still stopped, and you're right. Still stopped in Ford County. Even whether it's for a minute or anything, it still counts. This person, I think you guys think is pretty cool. Gibson City alumni. Does anyone know what an alumni is? When you graduate from Gibson, when you graduate and get your diploma from Gibson City High School, you are an alum. You are an alum of Gibson City. You will always be a Falcon. Huh? Yeah. Your high school diploma, you will always be a Falcon. GCMS, Falcon. This gentleman here, Curtis LeCue, Satan nickname, Day, was an early daredevil aviator. He was a daredevil boy aviator. What's aviating mean? Flying. Is flying something that was was flying easy when they first started flying? No. So this is him. And he graduated from Gibson City. There you go. Day was born, and he's actually buried here too. Day was born in Paxton, but he graduated from Drummer Township, Gibson City High School in 1913. He enrolled in the Wright brothers. Who's the Wright brothers?
People to build the airplane.
They built the first airplane. They flew the first airplane, right? He worked under them. He left here as soon as he graduated, and he went and worked for the Wright brothers.
That's cool. They should have named him Bear.
So he enrolled in the Wright Brothers School of Aviating. He trained as a pilot. He trained pilots during World War I how to fly. Because he was a daredevil. He would take a plane, one of them old-looking planes, and he would do all these tricks. Well, later on, he would help pilots in World War I become better pilots. But he is from here, and he is buried here. Yes. Just old age. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Where is he buried at?
Out in the cemetery. Yeah. Yeah, he's buried here. Where do you think the first hospital was built? We got the Gibson City Hospital. Do you think that was the first hospital ever built in Ford County? Paxton used to have a hospital. Do you think maybe that was the first one ever built? No. The first one was built Roberts. First hospital was built in Roberts, and this is a picture of it.
That looks like a big house.
That's what they were back then. They were big, huge houses, and then they needed all them rooms, and it became And this is not there anymore. It is tore down, unfortunately. Before hospitals, doctors would come to your house and perform surgery on your kitchen table.
Now Mama can't make some pasta.
Would you want that?
No.
I think supper's going to be awkward that night.
How you doing? Nothing. I'm throw that table out.
So it was started by Dr. Coltrax in 1923, and he ran it for 17 years. He was on the road constantly, going to people's houses, performing, and he thought, you know what, I'm on the road all the time. I don't ever get to go home. Why don't they come to me, put them in a hospital, and then I don't have to travel all over. And this was huge. People used this. This was a huge thing to have a hospital around. Dr. Coltrax was born and raised in Roberts. He passed up a Major League Baseball career to become a doctor. So he could have been a pro baseball player. He said, nope, I want to be a doctor. I want to help my community. Pretty cool. Today, the Gibson City is the only hospital in Ford County. Gibson City Hospital is the only hospital left in this county. Paxton's is gone. This is gone. Gibson City's it. And that's pretty cool.
Wait, if we don't get the one that Paxton got, we get the hospital.
Yeah, get the hospital. They had one. It closed up. So now you got it. You got the hospital. This is a professional baseball player from Gibson City. Of course, this is the early days of baseball. But this guy was Earl Hamilton, was born in 1891 in Gibson City. So he was born here. His major league debut was 1911 with the St. Louis Browns. Team doesn't exist anymore. But he was signed and went to play ball for them. He pitched. Hey, who in here plays baseball? Used to. Well, but you kind of understand. So you'll understand this term. He pitched a no-hitter against Detroit Tigers in 1912, becoming the first major league pitcher to pitch a no-hitter without recording a strikeout. That is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Didn't strike out one person. So there was no strikeouts, but he still had a perfect game. Almost impossible. That's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So he is recognized in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He's the only person to ever achieve that.
Whoa.
He pitched 16 shutout innings. Do most people pitch 16 innings as one pitcher? Today, you'd probably be lucky if you get 5 or 6 in. 16 consecutive innings in 1920 playing against the Pirates, or with the Pirates. Pirates are still around.
He ain't a pro, you say that.
He's a beast, isn't he? To pitch that long and to do, this is amazing. You can't do that stuff today. Guys today cannot do that. He was a monster on the baseball diamond. And like I said, he's recognized in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Thanks for talking.
I'm sorry I ran over.